I would now like to introduce Laura Wright, who is the CEO of Tate Enterprises. And she, we had an interesting thing last night at the directors' dinner in that the restaurant was given name tags for everyone and told to arrange the room as they saw fit. And I was incredibly lucky, and I scored both of the keynotes. And I had a lovely talk with Laura. So not only is she the CEO of Tate Enterprises, but she's something much more valuable, and that's she's a charming dinner companion. So please welcome her.
Hello. Thank you very much for that introduction. And I'd also like to thank you all for being so warm and welcoming since I've been here. I rather ignorantly didn't realise how fascinating and beautiful your country and culture would be, and I've just been blown away since I've been here, so it's been a delight. And I only hope you'll be as warm and welcoming after the talk as you have been before. I've been invited along to talk about, quite unapologetically, about revenue generation and money. Particularly with regard to Tate Enterprises, which is the company that's wholly owned by the trustees of the Tate. It makes money and it returns all its profits to the Tate every year. Before I start talking, what I should say is that I'm going to tell you what we do, but I don't take for granted or believe that any of you may be on the same path or want to be on the same path with revenue generation. So this is certainly not offered up as a how-to model, and I'm really interested to hear about how different organisations work differently to us, as well as how you work in the same ways. But having said that, that's not to say that I don't bring lots of opinions and prejudices to this conversation, and I'm sure they'll become really clear in the next half an hour or so. And I was slightly concerned about that, but actually, following Douglas's talk, I just think, well, strong opinions are a good thing, so I'll endeavour to add to them. So Tate Enterprises is, as I say, it's a company owned by Tate trustees. The bit that I look after covers retail, both in gallery and online, publishing, product development, picture library, licensing and filming. The whole company, though, also covers catering, and I think we're pretty unique certainly in London and probably in Britain, in being one of the large organisations that runs its own catering. It's a big operation, lots of turnover, lots of outlets, lots of staff, and so that is run separately from the bit that I manage. So, I hope I've got the right clicker here. Yes. Let me start off by telling you something about Tate. I'm sure you, lots of you know it already. But Tate looks after and conserves and manages the National Collection of British Art since 1500. And it also collects and displays modern and international art since 1900. It's a really huge collection. I think 70,000 pieces of work, not including archive. Some of those art pieces are on tour with partner organisations or on loan, or of course on the walls of our gallery. But even doing that, lots of it's in storage, and that adds a huge amount of care and cost to the collection that we own and maintain. There are 4 galleries at Tate. As you can see, it never rains at Tate. It's always beautifully sunny. There are 2 in London. The oldest is Tate Britain, top left, and the youngest Tate Modern, top right. And then we have a site in the north of the country at Liverpool and one in the south at St Ives. All of the galleries have certain things in common. They're all housed in pre-existing, often industrial buildings. They're all on water, I think partly because of the previous commonality. And they're all rooted in local audiences or histories, but nationally and internationally looking in terms of programme and partnerships. 3 of them don't charge for entry, but St Ives does, actually. It's a condition of our lease from the local council that we charge an entry fee. The other galleries are free, but then charge for temporary exhibitions. And actually that makes quite a different business model for St Ives than for the other 3. I believe there's a session later on in the conference, which I'm looking forward to, which is about admissions charging. The consequence of St Ives charging admission on entry for us is that we don't talk nearly as much about the programme within the building. And that's quite an interesting dynamic to have. We spend a lot of time talking about programme at the other sites. And I'll be interested to see whether the session later on talks about the impact on secondary spend of admissions charging. So I think there's a definite relationship there, quite a complicated relationship between charging and secondary spend. Let me give you some KPIs for the financial year 12-13. It was a very successful year for us. It was the year of the Olympics. It was a year of course, I was joking earlier, it was a year of endless rain. So I don't think we had much of a summer at all. And that impacted incredibly badly on visitor attractions with gardens and outside spaces. But actually for us, it was quite a benefit. We had a long-running Damien Hirst exhibition, which had lots of press and publicity. And other programme as well that was very, very popular. So we also had an Edvard Munch exhibition at Tate Modern and the start of a Liechtenstein exhibition. We had a Pre-Raphaelites show at Tate Britain, and we had a Chagall exhibition at Liverpool. And all of that programme really pulled people in. And I think being a part of the cultural Olympiad for the Olympics also pulled people into the collections as well. So we had 7.7 million visitors, most of them are at Tate Modern, 105,000 members. So membership's incredibly important to us, and programme really drives membership, because if people can see the benefit of becoming a member and entering free and quickly into the exhibitions, particularly popular ones, then it drives them to become members. I've put up a couple of stats about social media to show you that I'm going to talk about digital a bit later on and the complexities of it in relation to publishing, but I just wanted to show you that digital reach is really, really important for us, and it's very measured and it's very pursued and valued. So I've put up the Twitter and Facebook followers that we have and the current figures the day before I got onto the aeroplane to come over here. So you can see they're growing and we're really pursuing them, and we have a social media team who work really hard on increasing that reach. And here's a lovely pie chart. It's always good to have a pie chart showing where our income comes from. So the blue chunk is grant and aid. In other words, that's the grant we get from government. And then we have ticket sales and fundraising, sponsorship. The big green chunk is income through the company. So that is retail, catering, and all the other things that I talked about earlier on. Grant and aid has been decreasing dramatically over the last few years. Kate talked about a cold wind, and it's been a really, really difficult time for cultural organisations. Our grant and aid has fallen by about £10 million in real terms over the last 4 years. So it's a really significant chunk of the grant that we get. However, we've always been an organisation that values making our own money. And so I suppose the fall in our grant and aid didn't drive new initiatives, but it simply increased the ones which we'd already had established. So people have talked a lot about brand, and one of our brand values is to be entrepreneurial, which I think is probably, again, pretty unique. And we've spent a long time pursuing sources of income, and I think our ultimate goal would be to be unreliant on government grant. However, I have to say something important about this pie chart, because it's never a straightforward story. This is showing income, so it's not showing profit on our own activities. So if I was to show a profit chart, the value of the grant in aid would look significantly bigger than that. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about Tate Enterprises. So this is the bit of the company that I look after. So of that 27 million in the green box, nearly 17 million of it came through our efforts through the shops and publishing and product development last year. We have 140 members of staff, lots of them part-time, lots of them through the retail outlets. We made over £1 million in gallery transactions in that year, and we returned £2.7 million profit to Tate. So that's exactly the point I made earlier, that income is a different thing to profit, and you have to really carefully measure where you're making money, so you're not chasing income to no purpose. To do all of that, of course, we have some principles. I've massively simplified them here. We support Tate mission and vision. Our mission is to increase public knowledge, understanding and appreciation of art. And our vision makes that live, and actually it is something that all members of staff at Tate could talk about. We uphold the brand. So again, brand is not just a mark, it's also all the brand values and associations that go along with that. And we make money. And all of those three things have to work together. So we don't produce, make or sell anything that supports Tate mission and vision if it's going to lose us a lot of money. But equally, we don't sell things that are going to make us stacks and stacks of profit if they would undermine the brand. All of those things have to work together. So we spend a lot of time thinking about the mission, the brand, and profit. The way we do that is to very simply put customers at the heart of our thinking. I just want to talk about language for a tiny bit, because it seems to be quite a prevailing theme so far. Everybody will be used to talking about audiences. That's okay, that's useful, but it's quite theoretical, I think. When you talk about audiences, you're not personalising, I think, often the experience of people visiting the museum. So although I think audiences are a useful starting point, often I don't think that's enough. Quite often people talk about visitors, especially if they work at front of house and they see people come in. That's much more useful. People are actually visiting and coming to see your galleries and organisations. And then we talk about customers all the time. And we feel proud about that. People are going to come and spend money with us, and money as a marker of their enjoyment. We need to talk about them in that way. Customers haven't been spoken about very readily in large parts of the organisation for long. But this year we did a staff survey, and for the very first time in our staff survey we said, how well do you think we serve our customers? And I was really proud of that, and I imagine that that is actually quite an unusual question to be asked in some parts of the organisation, but I think it's a really important one. So, we put customers at the heart of our thinking. To do that, you really need to know something about them. There's no point just thinking, yes, we're going to put customers at the heart if you don't actually know who they are. So, we do a lot of research, we talk to people in the shops, we survey them on exit, not all the time, we're not badgering them, but occasionally we ask them questions in our visitor survey, and we do organisational research about who's coming to visit. This may be familiar to lots of you, this kind of approach. It was a piece of research that was done for us by a company called Morris Hargreaves McIntyre. We did our first really in-depth visitor segmentation about 10 years ago now, and we followed it up about 4 years ago with a second swathe of research. it's very much a visitor segmentation, so it's what people do when they're coming to galleries. And what we did was broke it down into 4 drivers for the reason they visit cultural organisations, Tate, actually. The social, so they're coming along, they're using it as a social space to hang out. That's often tourists and sightseers and families. Intellectual, so they want to come along and really learn something and have taken something away. That doesn't have to be about expertise. So you can be a specialist and come along and want to learn something, and you'll end up in the researcher category probably, or you can be a self-improver, someone who wants to really learn something more, even if you don't have that specialist background. An emotional driver, I think that these are often people who come back again and again to organisations and know and love them and know the artworks in them. I think if I see people sitting for a long time in the Rothko room at Tate Modern and coming back, I often think they're probably driven by an emotional response to that work. And spiritual, these are probably you, real experts. Art is at the heart of what they do. Art and culture is at the heart of what they do. It's absolutely essential to them. So we did this survey. We had certain amounts of information about these people, these visitors, as customers in that survey, and we leapt on it. And we absolutely sort of hauled apart all of this information and really tried to use it to inform what we were doing commercially. The first time we did the survey, I don't think it was widely picked up in lots of the different parts of Tate. But it was used by marketing people and commercial people and people who are outward facing to visitors. Something to say is that in the second survey we added in one of these groups. They didn't show up first time round, and they're urban cool. So we had a social spacer group. They were people who were hanging out with friends, but that's a wide demographic within that group. And 50 or 60-year-old couples hanging out at Tate Modern are really different, or Tate Britain are really different to students hanging out at Tate Modern, and we wanted to reflect that, and so this group, Urban Core, was added in. Some of these visitor types are not customers, so we don't pursue all of them. Some of them just really don't want to spend money, but lots of them do, and so we really spent some time analysing those people. Let me give you an example of how we used that information. When we got the first survey back, we thought we were doing brilliantly for tourists, and we were really shocked and dismayed to discover that they didn't like what we were offering them, really. They thought the shops were too expensive, they thought there was nothing relevant to them, it didn't reflect their experience of visiting Tate. And when we'd opened with a lot of product that reflected the brand and the building. And as time had gone on, so 3 or 4 years had passed, we'd updated those products and we'd moved them along, and we'd made a really classic mistake, and we had thought that our customers were like us. So it wasn't new to us anymore. We'd opened that building, we'd lived with it for 4 years, we'd gone through all the changes and shifts and subtleties and exhibitions, and we thought everyone had come on that journey with us. And of course they hadn't. You know, people are visiting Tate for the first time now and always will be, and they're not us, and they haven't had our experience of the building and the collection. So we really needed to update what we were doing for them. And the other thing that had happened was that Tate Modern had a significant impact on its environment and its surroundings. When it opened, it really was the thing that you came to see in that part of London. But actually, it regenerated that bit of the city. We built the Millennium Bridge. I say we. The Millennium Bridge was built, and it connected us to St Paul's Cathedral. And there were lots and lots of places that people were now visiting as part of a sort of day trip. So Tate was being visited alongside 5 or 6 other places as part of a walk along the river. Those tourists doing that trip had limited amounts of time and cash and suitcase space, and they weren't going to buy something in every single place they went to. So we decided to make a range of products that showed Tate in its environment. I don't know if that sounds at all radical to you now, but at the time it was a subject of quite fierce debate, because what it was doing was acknowledging that some people were coming in to see the building and they weren't engaging very much or at all with the collection. And they largely weren't going to paid exhibitions. That felt like quite an important thing to talk about at the time, and it still is an issue for Tate Modern. Is it a tourist attraction? Is it an art gallery? Anyway, we worked our way through it. We produced a range of merchandise that reflected Tate and its environment, and we've updated it ever since. So this is about the 4th or 5th iteration of that product range. And as you can see, it shows Tate Modern and Tate Britain, but lots of other landmarks as well. This is the poster from the current collection. And we've learnt all sorts of things. A graphic approach works. Colour really helps. Flat, light things really work for tourists. And price is really, really important. So we think about price a lot. Here's a kid's umbrella. We sell a lot of those. I'll just talk about a product range that's newer than that we're proud of, which is for that group I mentioned earlier on, which is urban cool. It must be apparent to you that I'm not part of that group, and we wanted to make something for them. We knew they wanted to spend money, but we didn't want to impose something that didn't feel right for that group of customers. And we wanted it to feel very Tate. So what we decided to do was to work with a group called Tate Collective. They're a group of young people aged 16 to 25. They're affiliated with the learning team at Tate. They are incredibly active. They're probably the most diverse group in the organisation. They have a very open membership, but they programme. When we opened the old tanks at Tate Modern last year, they programmed a significant chunk of the time the tanks were open. They're a very exciting, dynamic group of young people. Oh, sorry, I can't see the next slide along. For the tourist range, that's the Liverpool one. So we set them a brief. We asked them to think about what they'd like to buy and what they'd like to see their friends wearing, and they entered some responses to that, and we picked some product, and this is what we came up with, or what they came up with. This is the photo session they did themselves, so they did all of their own publicity, they engaged in social media. It's absolutely brilliant stuff. We could never have come up with it ourselves. The designers who designed those different T-shirts get a royalty for what they make, so they get help with their studies. They get a nice check sent to them every now and again, and the T-shirt on the left is in our top sellers at the moment. A really, really important product group for us is art materials. And earlier on, when Kate said, what do you associate with your organisation? And I said, delight. And I think that what we really hope is that people come out of their visit and they feel inspired by what they've seen, and they want to engage themselves. It's not a passive experience. And often they want to draw something, often for the first time in years. So we make a range of art materials, and they are really, really one of our key revenue drivers. Now, they're obviously not aimed at real specialists, but they're aimed at those people who want to do some artwork perhaps for the first time in a while. From a brand point of view, they're brilliant brand carriers. From a commercial point of view, they're product that gets used up and people have to buy them again. So it's a virtuous circle from all points of view. That product group works for us, and we make sure we have it in every single shop that we have. Now, of course, we want to work with artists in making product. That can be easier said than done. I think I was having an interesting conversation with Roy earlier on in my visit about the possibility of scaling up individual artists' work to become something that can be more, can move along the line to being mass-produced. And that's not something that all artists want to engage in. But some people are really interested in making that journey, I suppose, from producing one item to producing many items. And then I'm going to show you a couple. I could show you some things that haven't worked very well, but I thought that would be a bit indiscreet, so I'm going